Okay, good morning. I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to our March edition of our Government Affairs Committee meeting. We have a great guest with us this morning, and Rush is going to do the honors of introducing her. I'll just give you a few of the ground rules of the meeting today. If you have any questions of Grace, she's going to talk about 20-25 minutes, and then we're going to get into a little Q&A session afterwards. So if you do have a question you want to ask, please put your question in the Q&A box. Don't put it in the chat box. After Grace is done, we have a couple of, maybe 2 to 4 of our legislative representative from the various elected offices that are going to give updates on what their electeds are doing. So stick around from that. It's always interesting to see what's happening over in the Board of Supervisors or up in Sacramento. And I believe this morning we're even going to have the new representative for Congresswoman Michelle Steele with us. So we'll find out what's happening in Washington. It's always exciting things going on over there, apparently. But and then we'll have a few closing announcements. So with that being said, I will turn it over to my colleague, Rush Hill.
Thank you, Steve. I would like to extend my welcome as well to the Governmental Affairs meeting for March. We're very pleased to be back into full swing, providing this opportunity for chamber members and those that want to become chamber members. We're very pleased to have with us this morning Grace Leung, the city manager of Newport Beach. She became our city manager in September of 2018, and she's responsible for the city's day-to-day operations, which actually is directing a staff of approximately 730 full-time employees, 450 part-time employees, as well as overseeing the services of 11 departments and managing an annual operating budget of nearly $210 million. She has more than 2 decades of experience working in local government. She began her career with the city of Long Beach and went on to serve for the city of Sunnyvale for 18 years, specializing in municipal financing, budgeting, and administration. During her tenure with Sunnyvale, she developed the city's performance-based budget and its 20-year financial plan and served as the city's finance director for 6 years. Grace left Sunnyvale to join the city of Irvine as its administrative services director, and she was soon promoted to assistant city manager and later to acting city manager, overseeing the city's operations and leading its administrative services, community development, transportation, and public works departments. It's after that that she came to the good side, and we were glad to bring her over to Newport Beach. Grace holds a bachelor's degree from Columbia University in Urban Studies and a master's degree in public policy from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. She is a member of the International City Managers Association. And her and her husband, Jim, have 2 children, Skylar and Miles. Her hobbies include supporting her children in their activities, volunteering with Skylar through the National Charity League, and outrigger canoeing in Newport Harbor. This is the place for her. We're pleased to have her. We're very pleased to have her as our featured speaker today. So Grace, I hand it over to you at this point in time.
Oh, thank you so much, Raj. Thank you for that nice introduction, and thank you to you and the Chamber and Steve for having me here. It's a great opportunity to be here and just talk about a little bit about what's going on in the city. And I have a presentation, and really I'm going to talk around some specific topics around budget trends, quality of life, infrastructure. We have some stuff going on with refuse and recycling, talk a little bit about that, and airport always being a primary issue here in the city, so a little bit of work there too as well. So let's get into this. I'm going to start with the budget side of things and budget trends. We did have a planning session in January where we started talking about the budget and really going through things. And, you know, it's an interesting time right now. I think overall, it's very positive in the directions we're going. Certainly COVID and the impacts around that, we're still grappling and going through that. But as we're seeing a little more positive trends as the recovery is coming, as we're seeing the vaccinations and the numbers coming down. So we're cautiously optimistic there through that. So I'm going to talk a little bit on what that revenue picture looks like a little bit as we're developing the budget right now. As you know, our fiscal year is July through June. So we're kind of right in the heat of it at the moment. developing the budget. But we're also dealing with a lot of budget pressures, and I'll talk a little bit at this level, but as I go into the other issues, you'll see that's where the topics I'll get into a little bit more. Obviously, all these things have a financial issue to them. So let's go into the revenue summary here. These, as you know, are general fund. Our top three revenues are property sales and hotel taxes. That makes up 75% of our budget. So those are what we keep our closest eye on. The good thing though, the last kind of full year without COVID, 18-19, we came in at about 230 million. And we actually ended the last year, fiscal year 19-20, right about the same, flat. You know, in a lot of ways we were, you know, quite cheered by that because COVID hit in March, you know, a year ago, right at the time we were developing the budget. We had to go in and based on what we knew at the time with all the closures, put in what our estimates were. We actually originally were put in the budget about 219 million. So the fact that we came up flat was a very good thing. And then for this current year, we're looking at 219 million, 218.6. So that is also very good. I mean, this is one full year all in during this COVID time period. Our adopted budget was just under 200 million, 199 for the set of general funds. So again, this is good news in that sense. However, you do see from last year, we are down. And then this next year, we're putting in growth. We, you know, luckily property tax has stayed strong, not affected, and that's great because that's actually 50% of our general fund. But really where you see it is in the sales tax, and so there's a nice lift that we are projecting to come in the next year. But our hotel taxes still are low. They're coming back up, but still not to the level that, you know, we'd certainly like to see. And really, I think where that you can see is, well, we're in a good place, and certainly I'd rather be here than probably any other city in Orange County or, you know, most of the rest of the state, frankly. The issue is if we had continued on our trajectory of revenues from that 18-19 year, you can see this dotted blue line growth that's happening that we should have been. And while this is good that we haven't had, you know, larger losses, you know, this gap is where our challenge is, and how, you know, how quickly we start to get back up onto that trend line there. And then on the revenue side, we've certainly worked to match up with what's happening. We did a 6-tier program of reductions. We've constrained on our operating side, had a soft hiring freeze, you know, outside of public safety for quite some time to hold our expenses. So we've really worked on keeping that low. And I will note this 2021 projection right here is a little high. We typically come in $5 to $10 million lower on our operating side. Our departments are very good about not spending if they don't need to. So this number will come down a bit. I know it's a little hard to see maybe. There you go. It's 228 there. That'll come in lower than that on the trend line. So we are watching for that. But as we develop this budget for 21-22, as I mentioned here, you can see there are budgetary pressures on our operating side, and with that flat revenue, without that revenue growth, that's a balancing we're looking for to really be doing. We have homeless shelter costs. I'll talk a little bit later, but we have a partnership with Costa Mesa for shelter beds. That is $1 million a year of operating costs we are committed to for 20 beds. Refuse and recycling contract costs are going up due to state mandates and the recycling requirements that are in place. I'll go over that too. And then generally too, levels that we need to do to make sure we maintain our quality of life here. And that does look at where, and I'll talk about some of the additional activities and pilot programs we're launching, which do cost money to do additional areas of monitoring, education, and enforcement, and then just the general service level demands that we have seen, through this COVID time period, whether it was increased refuse and, street sweeping type of costs and maintenance, of our sidewalks, and a whole host of things that we're really looking at here of looking to balance that against what we're seeing on our revenues. So more to come on this. Our budget will be presented to the Finance Committee in April and coming to the City Council in May. There'll be times, opportunities in all those times to talk to provide public comment during all that. And then we look to adopt a budget in June. But again, overall, I think it's a positive picture given the environment that we are in, but certainly a lot of pressures and constraints we're looking at. Let me, oops, don't want to go back there. Let's go to refuse and recycling. You've probably gotten your letters in the mail about an increase to our recycling fee. So I just wanted to touch briefly on that. There's a lot of state recycling mandates that are coming into implementation now that are required for us. And I'm not going to go through all these, but one of the key ones here I'll just point out is having residential organics recycled and food recovery as part of this. So all this requires different behaviors and additional costs that go with that. So one of the big things is we need to go to a 3-cart system here. So we have to have separation of the waste streams. So between the trash, the recycles, and the organic waste. And in that structure, we have to have a contract that delivers all that for us. And so those increased costs do have to, as you know, for refuse costs, those are paid by the general fund, but we do have a recycling fee that pays for the recycling portion. And that fee has not been increased in many years. And so what we're proposing to do is, for most households, it's currently $3 a month. We're looking at going to $6.28. And Newport Coast, when the annexation happened, didn't pay into the recycling fee. They'll now be paying $5.86. And the cost differential is due to, there's 2 contracts right now operating. Eventually, we're going to work to merge those 2 together. We have gone to council about doing that contract merger. But in the meantime, we want to make sure we're doing this as a cost of recovery fee. So to make sure we got a consultant to look at the costs and what the revenue fee needs to be to recover those costs. And that's what these fees will be doing. So there is a public hearing, at the March 23rd meeting, which is next week. And if there aren't over 50% formal protests on that, council can move forward with that recycling fee, which we would implement beginning in April. And that's pretty critical for us. It's going to generate, I want to say, about 1.3 million for us for the general fund, and covers, because right now it's covering about 40% of recycling costs, and this will cover the 100% of those recycling costs there. So those are the main things I want to hit on with that. So it's a big topic that will continue. You'll hear more on the education side of how you need to manage the trash and the recycling going forward. So let's talk a little bit on infrastructure. That's another big area for us. It's a big area that we had to really take a hard look at as part of the COVID impacts with the revenue losses. One of the big areas that we looked at was deferring projects. If we want to keep our core services going, we want to make sure that was first and foremost. So we looked at our projects, what could be deferred. So we ended up deferring about 20 million in this current year budget. And as we're getting out of that, as we're looking at revenues coming back, we want to make sure we still maintain our infrastructure and our assets. That's a really critical piece for the city to be doing here. So in developing this proposed CIP budget, our public works staff had just provided an early look to council at the last council meeting and talked about, we do have a proposal that's about 69.8 million for our CIP. That's going to be considered by city council, 30 million of new funding, about 40 million that's carryover of continuing projects there. Of the deferred projects of that 20 million, though, we are going to, we prioritize those deferred projects. So there's about 1.3 million that we're including in this upcoming budget. We said it was fine to defer for 1 year, but we need to keep those moving forward. Those include some alley reconstruction design, some rehab in West Newport Park, some projects there. Then we have a second set of priorities that's about $3 million that we're saying we really think they should be funded with this upcoming budget. And we've listed those separately for council so that they could take a look at them and look at including those. And we think we have the capacity. We're building in our either surplus funds or other types of funds that we have in our budget. And those include streetlight rehab, some Balboa Boulevard median improvements, some landscape improvements, those types of projects there. And then we have a set that's, we're saying at this point, let's continue to defer about 14.6 million. Some of them make sense to defer because they won't be happening timing wise. For example, the junior guard building, while we're doing the design now, the construction is really going to not happen in this next year. So let's get those for the year after that. So we don't need to budget for them now. We can defer them moving forward. I'll just note on the new funding side, we do have a set of, this shows you the new fundings by new projects by funding type. General fund, this $5 million, that's a base amount that we budget every year for kind of our bread and butter capital projects for the main pavement rehab, concrete replacement, those kinds of things. Last year, we did not put this in. So this year we are setting up our budget to include these. So that is where things like the street repavement, street pavement repair, playground refurbishments, those are going to be funded out of that $5 million. And then also note that out of this 30 million, quite a bit is out of other types of fund sources. We are always looking to see whether we have grant funds or other funding sources to utilize, and always are aggressive about that. About finding those kinds of funds. So you can even see under roadway and funding, you know, we have great pavement management program here. We will continue that with gas tax and other SB1, those types of funds. Our wastewater and water, which are enterprise funds funded by water fees and wastewater sewer fees. Those continue. A large part of these projects is actually the advanced meter infrastructure we're putting in. Which are kind of what you call like the smart meters to have the real-time readings on the water meter. So that's a great project that continues to move forward there. And I'll just note, let's see, on the FFPF MMP, where our facilities maintenance projects are, some of the highlights there are the Superior Pedestrian Bridge and Parking Lot project moves forward, and there's funding, a lot of that's in there for that. And also a new project actually, as part of this is pickleball courts up at Newport Coast. We have an opportunity to have a partnership with Newport Coast, the association up there, in terms of be able to have use of land and pickleball, high demand for pickleball courts. So this is something I think that will be a very a good asset to add in there. So just wanted to point those things out. And then on the rebudgets, which are our kind of carryover projects, we have several large ones in these. I'm not going to go over them one by one, but a lot of projects will be continuing. And you can see that's a lot of the funds here are with several key projects. But I will note that the dredging is a very important project for us, and we continue on that one. Okay, and then I'll also note some additional funding needs. Blow this up a little bigger. We continue, I'll talk a little bit later, as I think most people know, we're doing a general plan update with the housing and circulation updates first because of our requirements by the state on the housing element. But we will continue to do, we're looking at the comprehensive update. So there's going to be additional funds needed, not just in this next year, probably the year after that. And it really depends on how much additional work, how much additional master plans, type of things we're going to need to do. But this is going to be an extensive project that will require, you know, significant resources as we continue. And then the other big one is permanent supportive housing project. The council approved moving forward with an RFP to look at working with a private developer, do a public-private partnership on potential permanent supportive housing project up to 50 units here in the city. We do have two top proposers who are out looking at projects that they'll bring back to the city council for consideration. Part of that in their RFP that we did, we said there would be a city commitment. We're looking at $3 million. There will be hopefully development agreement developer funds available for, I hope most of that, if not all, but I am planning to look at least $1 million from the general fund from our budget surplus to assist with that there. So those kind of in a nutshell is on our infrastructure side. I'll also note that, oh, let me actually go to the next one under here. So I put a bullet here about future funding for infrastructure needs. I think that's always on my mind. We have a good plan. We have this facilities master plan that we have for our major projects. We don't have our parks projects in there. I think those need to go into the planning cycle too. We've been fortunate to be able to fund a lot of major significant rehab projects through development agreements. Those won't continue over the long term. We are looking at whether development impact fees would make sense in the future, particularly when we have these housing units that are being planned for, and to ensure that the infrastructure side is balanced together with that to support those. So there's a lot of bigger questions to consider as we continue through that. And then just to, I won't go into this too much. I'll just back up a little bit here. That we have a lot of great projects underway now, and I won't go into detail. I think the mayor at his last meeting covered this quite extensively too, but very exciting to see the groundbreaking for the fire station, the junior lifeguard building. The first steps get approved at the last meeting. Library lecture hall is currently under design at the planning stages right now to come back to council. So a lot of good work going on right now, and really good amenities for this community. Okay, airport issues. I won't touch on this very deeply, but I just want to assure folks that this is a continuing priority for the city that I'm involved in. As well as staff here. I have great Tara Finnegan, our deputy city manager, has done amazing work working together with our Aviation Committee and with all of our partners. And this is what I kind of want to highlight. You know, the airport issue is so complex and so challenging because of all the players involved, you know, in all of this. And you look, you know, obviously it's the county's airport. So we work very hard on developing a good relationship and maintaining a good relationship with that airport staff and working through with them. We had an opportunity to be quite engaged on the GAIP project and really got a lot of our needs and concerns addressed with and resulted in constraints on the airfield of the size of the planes there. So we'll continue to be monitoring and watching that project. We are looking at developing a fly quiet program that we'd like the county to implement. So we're working with them on that for the GA side. Obviously we have our curfew and constraints on the commercial side, but the GA side, which is an area of growth, we want to be watching for that as well. And we continue to work with the Board of Supervisors. We'll have a new supervisor seated soon, and certainly we'll be reaching out to make sure we make sure our priorities are known and hopefully work together with the supervisor. And as always, to maintain our settlement agreement, which is key. And then the other area we really are spending time on is on the FAA side. There was a reauthorization bill for the FAA that had noise provisions. So we've been very, we have a federal lobbyist that we work to monitor and see where, what we need to do to keep pressure on these areas. There's our congressional delegation we may have made known. Fortunately, we have a friend with Congresswoman Steele there, and she certainly well knows our concerns here. We had some initial success in a bill that looked at incentivizing air carriers for fleet transition, because we know that is going to be the best, most effective way to reduce the noise meaningfully, is to have that fleet changeover. So we are looking at all different tactics of how we can encourage and impact that. And one of the ways is through legislation in that form. We work with air carriers as well. We have a good partnership with the local community group AWG, where we have staff level folks from each of the air carriers participating, of looking at different departure profiles and where are there adjustments that can be made to reduce the noise. So really working through that and very engaged with community, with our consultants, and with the air carriers. And I think that's really paying dividends to develop a strong relationship with the carriers themselves, which I haven't seen with other cities and their airports in doing that. And also very excited about our Aviation Committee was restructured last year, has the 15 members in it. This year we have Councilmember Dixon as our chair and Councilmember Noah Blom as our vice chair. There's a set of priorities that they're working on. I think it's a very focused committee this year on specific areas and categories that they'll be working on. And I'm very excited about this group and the work they're going to be doing together. And Tara Finnegan, again, I'll just mention, is doing a great job of coordinating and assisting through all this good work that's going on, and always our community that we work closely with. And in addition to the 3 or 4 focus groups, we also have our corridor cities that Newport Beach typically leads on to make sure other cities are informed of issues. And if we need to get other cities involved, that's a form of which we'll do it, which we did, by the way, with our GAIP issues that happened with the county, that we did reach out then to be more impactful in that way. So lots going on still on the airport. Always a lot will still go on in the airport. The airport is here, so we'll continue to work and just really look at all different fronts as we continue to do that. All right, quality of life. So this is a big topic. So I have a lot of different categories under here, and this is something really top and foremost for all of us, for myself, and I would say for all the staff. You know, we really pride ourselves and work very hard and are committed to the quality of life for our residents and providing a high level of customer service and making sure we're delivering the service levels that we've been budgeted and we're committed to do and want to continue to do. And I think this last year was really quite a test of that too. I mean, we operated in a completely different environment through the COVID, you know, and patterns for people were different, certainly, and a lot more people staying at home, but we had also a lot more visitors than we had anticipated in very different ways. And this has really brought us into sharp relief for us. And we'll continue to work at this. I think sometimes we feel like we're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but we're going to continue to take those steps. Housing here, I don't think I'll have to belabor this. We have quite a lot going on our housing side. As I think most people know, there's a RHNA number, the Required Housing Needs Assessment, that comes down from the state and through SCAG. And our final number here for our next planning cycle for our housing element is 4,845 units, which is a whole lot of units. For us, especially when our current cycle is 5 units. Our draft housing element has just gone out for public review. You see on this chart, we will have a workshop next week on the housing element. It will continue through the process. We're planning on about mid-May to have a council study session. There's an EIR comment period during the summer. We'll have additional workshops and planning commission study sessions as well on this throughout the summer. The goal is to meet the state's deadline the best we can, which is October, to have an adopted housing element. Not totally sure if we're going to make it, but that's what we're certainly planning for and working hard towards. A lot of hard questions. You start looking at the housing draft. Where are the housing units going to be planned for and go? Lots of questions still to work through with everyone as a community together. Probably the first and foremost issue all around for the city right now is this housing element and these housing units and how we plan for those. Concurrent with that is the circulation. Obviously, if you have housing, you're having an impact on the circulation side. So that circulation element also been drafted and is going out and will be reviewed at the same time as we go through all this. Really heavy lift on the staff side through all these processes, and also for the community. You really need community members engaged and providing questions and working through all this together through these state mandates, frankly, that we now are being forced to work through on that. Another big topic, continue to be working on, and I think we've made a lot of positive progress, but we still have to keep doing more on this, is addressing homelessness. We have a great, what we call our rapid response team in the city. You can see some of them in the picture here, but Natalie Basmation, our homeless coordinator on the city side. We have a homeless liaison officer, Cynthia Cotter. They're doing an amazing job out there working every day, making contacts. And together with our CityNet, it's our outside contractor who provides this social work case management for working with our homeless. And we had a great study session on this. I want to say a couple council meetings ago. If you didn't watch, you might want to see the video. A lot of good information through that of the work we do, of the work they do day to day, to work on hopefully finding the people who find themselves homeless here into a more permanent housing situation. So we work through that. We have an integrated effort, a collaborative team that they will pull in people from other parts of the police department, from our public works department when we have to do a cleanup, and really get at issues that are occurring when we see the bigger gathering in our hotspot areas. So really working well through that together. And then one of the big pieces here is, and one of the things that we've been missing is we do not have shelter beds here in the city. Without that, we aren't able to enforce our anti-camping ordinance. So we have a partnership with Costa Mesa. They have a permanent shelter that's nearing completion here. We're actually going to be able to get a tour of the place next week. They're looking hopefully at mid-April to open for their own homeless in their temporary shelter. And then hopefully by May, we'll be able to access the beds that we are getting as part of it. So it's a total of 70 beds, 50 for Costa Mesa and 20 for Newport Beach. I'm very excited about the partnership. I think it's going to be a good way. And really, this is a regional issue that we all have to work on and collaborate together on it. So I'm looking forward to that, with that opening and be able to have access to those beds for us, and just another tool as we work with our homeless folks here. The county does have, it's called their Yale Transitional Center in Santa Ana. And to tell you about the work we've done since it's opened in the last 3 weeks for us, we've placed 17 homeless into that shelter. So just really good work. When we have these shelter beds, we're going to utilize them and work through our folks here to assist them in the best way that we can. And then I'll also just put a plug in. There's Good Giving. We have, if you would like to donate funds, they are certainly helpful when there's transitions. For example, we know a person is ready to go into a shelter, but a bed isn't quite open. Sometimes we'll put them in temporarily into a motel, for example. Those funding for that is helpful for us as people move in from there into a more permanent site. Furnishings are needed. We'll sometimes be able to assist with that through these funds that we get. So just want to note that for folks to keep that in mind. Another, let me go to the next one here. Boardwalk safety. So kind of a perennial issue, I think, is just the challenges on our boardwalk. It's very well used, which is great, but also can be challenging, particularly with all the different kinds of vehicles, types of vehicles that seem to be now traversing over that boardwalk. So one of the things we're doing that we just piloted this February, overseen by our police department, is to have a boardwalk ambassador program. And here you see the folks in these yellow vests out there. We've hired a company, CSC. They actually do this type of ambassador type program up at Manhattan Beach. And they are just have a presence, and they provide education. They say, hey, you know, you have your Surreys aren't allowed on the boardwalk. You know, you'll need to move on. And so we really think that together, working, you know, with our Peninsula Enforcement Team, our homeless liaison officer, and other patrol, really together, I think with that increased presence is hopefully going to have a positive impact. Currently, we've just gotten started, so we'll see how it goes. It's two-person teams. going from East Street to 36 streets, including the piers. And it's over the weekends right now during the daytime. So Friday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And we'll see with the summer as activity and crowds pick up, if it makes sense to expand that, see how it's working. So I'm eager to see how the statistics look on that. And we'll go from there and present to council some other potential, the program options that come of looking at that. Okay, and then the last quality of life one I want to touch on is short-term rentals. Really big topic. This is really big impact. We really saw during this COVID times where, frankly, a lot of people went from staying at hotels to feeling more safe and comfortable staying, in a home, which makes a lot of sense, but obviously has a big impact. We have 1,500 units in our city. That's a big number. And while it's important because they are legally allowed, we need to have that right balance with quality of life. And I am incredibly sympathetic to people who are impacted. When you have a good operator, everything's great, but you have one bad tenant, and so impactful to be living right next door to that. A lot of work's been done. We've had a council ad hoc committee do a great deal of work through this, and we have several regulations that are now in effect here. That includes, sorry, I'm kind of moving this around a little. I just want to make it a little bigger. There's a 3-night minimum and no new permits, and that's right now in effect through the emergency ordinance, through our COVID emergency ordinance. We have other regulations that have been put in to assist with making sure we have good monitoring and oversight, which includes rental age minimums, occupancy limits. The permit numbers need to be listed on all listings and advertisements. We have noise standards. A good neighbor policy must be printed within all of the units. And we have this hotline, as you see here, for folks to call into. And owners need to be able to respond within a set period of time to any complaints that come into that hotline. So we're really engaging on this. A lot of this has just started up through, so we want to see what the numbers start to look like for us. So there needs to be, I think, hopefully people can be a little patient as we see how these different things work through. But we're really optimistic, I think, in these regulations we put in, and really hoping that they will begin to have a positive impact on things. Oh, and then one other thing I'll mention is we do have additional code enforcement that we have on nights, on the weekend nights, to really address this too. So we're being proactive in a lot of ways. I know if you're living next to one, it can be very frustrating. So we're working through it, and we'll continue to do so. And that, I think, is actually my last point that I have on the different issues I have. So I will leave it there because I also see Steve and Rush coming on. So I don't know if that's a cane to pull me off. So
this is
Grace,
the zoo version
incredibly, that's incredibly informative. Obviously, a city even the size of Newport Beach has a lot of complexity, and one of the few full cities, complete cities in the county, with our own police, our own fire, our own lifeguard operations, and that type of thing. So we have just a couple of minutes for some questions, if you're willing to do that. And I'm going to ask you the first question.
Okay.
With respect to the new trash legislation, will the agreement that we have right now, we do not have to separate because we pay a fee to have that done professionally, which we actually implemented. And I think that $3 charge is the very first charge that was ever put on that. And that was the first unanimous vote I ever saw of the city also, as to whether to pay the $3 or to separate. How is that going to be impacted physically for the homeowners as we go into this new legislation?
Yes, we're going to have the separation done by the residents. I had shown that chart with the 3 carts. So there will be 3 carts for everyone. and that source separation has to happen. We need to have that happen because of the percentages that are going to be required by the state of what you're recycling at. So we need to have that happen from the source side, all the way through. So yeah, so there's going to have to be some behavior changes through all of this.
I think.
And then if that's the case, what's the fee for that the residents will be paying? If we're going to have to do our own separation, what is that $3 and going to $6 fee going to be for?
Well, of course, the separation, you're right, we'll start there, but it also has to continue. You have to make the each of those recycling streams as clean as possible. So there's still going to be sorting through all of those as they continue through. And then with each of those separated, if you think about it too, then the pickups for each of those, there'll be additional pickups that have to happen with different trucks that come in to do that. So there's additional costs in sort of the transportation of that recycling. And then there's just the cost of, particularly when you think of the organics too and where they're going, and the land, the costs to go to the final destination for those as well. So there's costs all along the way, unfortunately.
Steve, do you have any questions in the question box at all? Or?
Well, actually we didn't, but now we have two. So, but before we get to that, I also had a question. I just want to go back to the RENA and the housing element. Will there be a green light vote on that housing element, and when will that occur?
I think we'll likely need to have a green light on it. I am not sure exactly when that will happen though at this point. I think we have to, the draft housing element just came out right now. So I think we're just looking at what the scheduling will be from there. And I think things are still going to move around a little bit, with all the housing units and where they're going to be laid out in that plan. So that's not set right now, but I think there's a likelihood of a green light for the entire element itself.
Certainly that's not going to happen before that October timeframe.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think there's some thought of, okay, we'd like to just go to the voters once. So how does that work? Is it just with the housing element, or does it look at it together with the land use element piece too? So there's a lot of interrelatedness and pieces that we have to kind of knit together here as we move forward.
Okay. We do have a question in the Q&A. Trash and recycling seems to be a popular subject here. So it says, at the beach, will the city have separate trash containers in the public areas to encourage visitors to help with the recycling efforts?
That's a good question. And I think that would make a lot of sense. I'll have to follow up with staff on that, but I think that makes a lot of sense to have the separate containers there as well.
Mm-hmm. So that will require us to replace all those containers.
Right, and people have to pick those up, a little more work there.
Definitely. I also
have.
All
right, well, great. I think we're going to have to move on to hear from some of our representatives.
Yeah,
publicly elected.
So we got another couple seconds here. I just wanted to ask one last question because the homeless issue is such a big, important issue here in town. And I know with the shelter, that's going to give us the ability to help enforce our anti-camping ordinance and things like that. But realistically, if a homeless person doesn't want to go to the shelter, what are going to be the alternatives at that point?
Well, yeah, and that you're right. And you can't force somebody, into a shelter, but we do offer that. We'll offer that opportunity, and as long as we've offered the bed, they certainly can't stay overnight. That's the anti-camping piece of it. And what we've been doing essentially is we continue the contact with the individual. We found it takes time, but that individual repeated contact is what we need. And eventually, people do want help in some sense, and each person's so individual of how they got into their situation. So it's kind of cracking that open a bit, establishing a relationship, and hopefully moving into that point. But as long as they're, if they're occupying a public space and not doing it in a way that's, causing safety or harm, to others, then, they are allowed to be in that public space. With the anti-camping, they won't be able to camp overnight or sleep overnight, but we'll have to allow that. But we'll continue to monitor them. It's amazing the level that Officer Carter and Natalie know on each of the individuals we have out there, because they're working out there pretty hard to establish those relationships.
Great. Well, I think as Rush was saying, that's about all we have time for. It was a very comprehensive talk. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm sure I'll have a bunch of questions after I'm done, but I'll just email them to you. maybe we'll have lunch one of these days now that we can do dine in again in the city.
That's right. That sounds great. Thank you.
So
Thank you, Grace.
So
We
Rush,
appreciate your time.
Rush, we
All
have
right, let's.
two of our reps here. So I'm going to go to Ash Alvandi. He's going to speak for Dave Min's office. So let me just promote him to a panelist. And Ash should be joining us. And of course, Grace, if you need to get going, you're welcome to stay, or if you have more pressing things, you can move on to that.
Sure.
Good morning, Ash.
Good morning, Ash.
Good morning. How y'all doing?
Good.
Good. Well, thanks so much for having us today. Grace, pleasure to see you again as well. Just wanted to give a couple updates. As you all know, we are moving into the next phases of the SB 87 Small Business Relief Grants. And just again, wanted to offer our services in our office to see if anyone needs any assistance. Right now, we are in the phase that is for nonprofit cultural institutions. However, starting on March 25th through March 31st, there will be the 5th round. And there will be a 6th round after that as well. So we'd be happy to help you all navigate that process, which I know can sometimes be a little bit cumbersome. In addition to that, we will be holding a town hall with the Small Business Development Center and going through all the programs that are available to small businesses in Orange County, both the federal programs, state programs, and all county and city programs. So we'll be following that up with a event with the insurance commissioner on April 1st at 1:30 p.m. So it'll be an afternoon one for once. And I think that one should be more informative on some of the changes in insurance and how you can kind of make sure that you're not falling behind on other updates that have occurred in the next couple of years. I think that's all I have. Otherwise, please feel free to reach out and let us know if you need any support, and we'd be happy to coordinate a time for us to chat about your business's needs.
Yeah, just to clarify that on the emergency relief grant program, I believe that for the rounds that are occurring right now and maybe the next one up, you already had to have submitted an application in the previous rounds. And they're going to also be giving some advantage to minority and women-owned businesses once they do reopen it. Is that accurate?
So in round 3 that finished on March 11th, that was the case. If you had applied previously, you would have been included in that. And then if you applied during the round 3, then you would now be included in round 5 that's coming up. Round 4 is only for the nonprofit institution. So round 5 will include if you applied in the last month or two. And then yes, there will be different criteria which they choose from. And then round 6, which the date is still not announced, will include everyone who applies in the next week or two. So I guess there's 2 things here, which is A, you're either going to be included in this next round, or it's time for you to apply if you haven't applied at all, so that you can be included in the final round, which may or may not be the final round.
Okay. Well, we applied, but I haven't seen our check yet, so I'm still hoping. Watching the mail every day. Thank you, Ash. We appreciate your participation. So
thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Ash.
So next up, we have the new representative for Congresswoman Michelle Steele. That's Austin Mejia. And Austin, I'm going to promote you to a panelist now so you can give us your report. If he's here. And also, Rush, Tim Whitaker has joined us, so we'll have him afterwards.
Okay.
Him on too. There.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Austin Mejia, field representative and caseworker for Congresswoman Michelle Steele, who represents the 40th Congressional District. I have a few updates, so thank you very much for allowing me.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Representative Steele has been assigned to 2 different committees, the Education and Labor Committee, and also the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And so I invite everyone to check out steele.house.gov. You can sign up for our newsletter, which we distribute once a week on Fridays. and that gives you an up-to-date about what's going on in the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., and it gives you some updates about some bills that are going on in the House. At steele.house.gov, Representative Steele's website, you have you could request a few different things on that website. You could request certificates for community partners, new businesses. We love to attend grand openings or business awards. If there's going to be new officers for the Newport Chamber, we'd love to recognize you all for serving. You could give us some feedback on legislative priorities or some of your opinions on some of the bills that are going on in the House of Representatives, and we love to hear community members. And you could also request assistance with federal agencies, so federal casework. Should you have any issues with the IRS, we could reach out to them on your behalf. Other federal casework include passports, immigration matters for either yourselves or your employees, veterans casework, and we also have contacts with the Small Business Administration. So we do try to provide some guidance and some info and some a way to kind of be the middleman with some of these federal agencies because they've been difficult to reach out to in the past. With our office, we have our district office set up. We are in Huntington Beach off of Warner and Beach Boulevard. If someone has an issue with the federal agency and would like some casework, you could turn in a privacy release form in person to our office. We have a few fun events coming up. We have an art competition for high school age students, and so that's going to be going on in May. The winners will have their art displayed in the U.S. Capitol, so it's a great honor for the young artists in the community. It's going to be Vietnam War Veterans Day on March 29th. And so our office is going to be partnering with the Department of Defense to honor Vietnam vets with a lapel pin and a thank you from Representative Steele. So please look out for some more info on that. We're going to be celebrating with, I believe, a small video address, and then we're going to have the program to distribute the lapel pins in the near future. Representative Steele, she's on the Education and Labor Committee. And so she would like to reach out and meet and chat and start a dialogue with families that are negatively impacted by school closures. And so she'd love to get some feedback on the ongoing discussion about reopening schools safely and the impact it has on children and families in our community. And I will include my email in the chat. And I look forward to reaching out and touching base with a lot of people in the Newport Chamber and business community. And thank you very much again for having me.
Thank you, Austin. We already have 3 ribbon cutting set for the next several weeks, so we'll make sure to you get that information, and you're welcome to join us. But more importantly, can you help people get their stimulus checks? And how do you get a tour of the White House or the Capitol building?
Yes, so we could definitely help out for anyone with the issues with their stimulus checks. If you go on steele.house.gov and you put for federal agency assistance to IRS, that helps out with this matter. So we could definitely, inquire if you are still missing the first 2 even. We can get some info on that. It's usually going to be something that you include in your tax return. And when you're filing, and so you can get a tax refund for like a rebate if you qualify for the first 2 and you're missing them. For this upcoming one, we could definitely inquire if there's any irregularities or anything had not come to your account yet. For tours of the Capitol, I believe you could request one on our website. However, just due to COVID restrictions, I do believe there are limited capacities for that. For requesting a tour of the White House, I believe it's the White House's website you would go, but I do believe there is also, some restrictions on that due to COVID and the amount of people they're allowing to visit some of these facilities for other security reasons as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll be.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you very much.
So our last,
So
I'm sorry, Raj, go ahead.
we have Tim Whitaker with us, I understand.
Well, we have Tim Whitaker.
Whitaker, rather.
Whitaker was was a term used in, there's Blackacre and Whitaker. That was like in my law school days. And that was used for,
Environmental conditions.
yes, I don't know.
Hi,
Welcome,
Tim.
Tim.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We can.
And
Very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all good things must come to an end. And a chapter in my life is closing here, and that has been to serve you all with hopefully some grace, some humility, some humor, and hopefully you found me very helpful. However, as you know, there was a special election, and Mayor Katrina Foley from Costa Mesa is now the supervisor-elect, and she actually is going to be coming into my office in a bit to do a quick tour with some of her transition team. My official last day here is going to be tomorrow because they're going to start prepping the office for her. They will certify the election on Tuesday. She will be sworn in on Wednesday and will resume the duties of the elected supervisor for the remaining term until 2022, the November. So if people want to ask anything about county updates, I can give it to them. I just want you to know I'm not going to go too far right now. Effective Tuesday of next week, I will actually start to stand up with the county's incident management team. And the incident management team is the leadership put together by the CEO's office, the healthcare agency, and the Orange County Fire Authority. Its primary responsibility is to ensure rollout and distribution and management of the vaccines. And of course, as we all know, that's been quite crazy with, trying to deal with the state and receiving sufficient amount. But as we move out of 1A and continue to finish that, but be able to go into 1B and elsewise, our goal, of course, is to have everybody who wants to be vaccinated no later than July 4th. The more vaccines we receive in a more timely fashion, the faster we can accomplish that. But that's what I'll be doing for a short time before I roll into something else. And I will be working with the liaison section of that. So I'll probably still be talking with a lot of the city leadership and whatnot because of that. So they thought my skill set would work well there. I agree with them. I think it'll do well. And I love working and serving the community and serving you, ladies and gentlemen. So whatever I can do. I think most of you have my cell phone anyway. I won't be far. I'll still be a wealth of information. And if I can try to assist you even without that title, don't hesitate to call me. You guys are a great chamber. You're our best chamber, I got to tell you, in 2nd District. So kudos to you guys. I'm not just saying that because I'm on the phone right now and talking in front of everybody.
We're the baldest chamber, right?
Well, this is not bald. This is solar powered, Steve. Come on.
Okay.
But anyway, thank you all so very much for being my friend, being my colleague. And again, I'll be looking to continue with you, and do not hesitate to reach out to me for anything if you need help on something. And I sincerely mean that. And Steve, I wish you, Rush, the chamber, Godspeed, and a great fast recovery as we come out of this ridiculous COVID restrictions we've had to endure.
Is your email
Tim,
address
you've been a tremendous asset for us.
Is your email address going to stay the same with the county?
I think it will. I don't think it's going to change much. It should stay the same. I'm going to know that actually tomorrow. And then when I do have when I have my long-term situation, because the IMT is for a certain time just to help it accomplish its mission. But I will be, which I'm not at liberty to talk about at the moment, but I'll be moving elsewhere within the county, and still in a position where I think publicly I'll be involved with things on behalf of the county. But I'll give you, if anybody would like, I'll say it slowly. I will put my personal email out for you guys. It's just my initials and my last name, T.R. Whitaker. So WHITACRE, T.R. Whitaker @gmail.com. That's my personal one. If for any reason there's a hang up in the next week or two with that, feel free to do that. My cell phone is 714-615-1111. That is my personal cell phone. Anybody on this call, feel free to use it as you need to. It'll be an honor and a pleasure to continue to try to serve in any way I can. And that's it, unless you have any questions.
No, I'll just say thank you as well to you over the, I think it's at least 6 years that we worked together as you represented Michelle when she was supervisor. I mean, you've always been a great resource and an asset to the chamber here. Anytime I needed a county official to be on, at one of our meetings or arrange for anything, you were always my go-to guy, and I could always count on you to get the job done. So sorry to see you go, but I'm glad that, you at least have a transition spot and maybe a long-term plan in place as well. I'm sure we'll be bumping heads, literally and figuratively, in the future. And you're always welcome here. Maybe we'll even have you back next month for a COVID update, since you're going to be with those people. So
Hey, you never know.
there we go. There's life after the Board of Supervisors office.
Yes, there is.
So okay.
Tim, you've done well, and you've treated us well, and we've greatly appreciated it. You have been a true asset, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Rush.
All right.
All right,
Okay,
well,
do we have?
Nope. No one from the Cotty Petrie Norris's office, unfortunately, this morning, so we'll have to give them a tongue lashing. But great report from Grace and our legislative representatives as well. We don't have our program set yet, I think, for next month, but I'm sure we'll have another exciting speaker that everybody will be interested in, hearing what they have to say. So that's all I have for this month.
All right, we thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Very good. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. God bless everyone.